Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Brewing eCommerce. And I have to say, I kind of don't believe that I'm kind of recording this because the gentleman right with me, sharing the one I'm hosting today, has kind of kept me really writing long LinkedIn messages for quite some long time, etc., etc. He's a busy man. He writes about a lot of stuff. He's one of the coolest guys in e-commerce that you can read about on LinkedIn, and I'm so happy that finally Vinny has agreed to join me. So Vinny, welcome.
Thank you so much. I wanted to join just to get an intro like that. You don't get the warm and fuzzies so much from podcasts, but having listened to this a few times, I was excited to be able to get an intro like that. But it's way too kind. Really appreciate it, and thank you for having me along. I appreciate it.
No, Vinny, all thanks to you. There are people who who kind of draw attention to on LinkedIn, right? There are people you can read some stuff about and then say, "Oh, cool," right? But you're one of those who makes me kind of think. The way you write, kind of questions, and which is a very rare uh, ability of people to be able to do that, especially knowing that 90% of the people on LinkedIn are very docile and silent and they don't respond, they don't engage, right? So I've got this golden ticket today to kind of go deep dive into your whole journey and where you are.
Yeah.
And I promise to make the most of it.
Oh, likewise. Look, I'm just excited to talk about the industry that we're in, and I think the important part for me is that 99% of people that you said, like they don't say anything, and they
Yeah.
still want to get information. So hopefully during the course of the conversation, we can give them a little bit of something to think about, and hopefully it'll be worth their time.
Super. Let's get kickstarted, right?
Go for it.
Just for anyone who even goes and looks at your LinkedIn profile, even on the first page, when after like 4 or 5 of your professional experiences, it
Mhm.
still says click here more for 25 kind of a thing, right?
Okay.
So you've had a vast decade of career in the industry, and this is spanned over different series of roles and responsibilities, etc. So I want to go from the start. How did your career start from after your education, and what abouts, and how did you end up landing into the world of this e-commerce?
You said we only have 40 minutes, right? So we might want to extend. No, look, I've been in our industry a long time, but if I go way back, I've always kind of been involved in retail or some way, shape, or form. So when I was 13 years of age, I lived in a small village, 1,500 people. I just wanted to work. I knew I wanted to do something to have money, to have freedom, and all those things that go with it. And it wasn't so much about having lots of money, it was about having something. So I walked up to our local butchers and I said to them, "Can I have a job?" And luckily, they weren't checking labor laws for children or whatever, but they allowed me to work as a 13-year-old. So I used to go in after school and on Saturdays, and that continued for 11 years. So I got into corporate banking in Ireland, and I live down in the southwest. Our next stop is New York. Um, so I got into banking and realized very quickly I hated it. So I left university on a Friday, worked on a Monday. It was never for me, but it was always one of those things that if I got a job straight, I was happy to go and get my career progression going. And
Right.
within that, it was clear that the only way I was going to be able to progress was to do continued finance exams. And I'm moderate to average at finance. Like understanding it is one thing, but managing it and all those other things, I didn't really like it. So I was always trying to get out of it and move into something different. So like every sensible person, all my friends had moved to London. I decided I'm going to jump on a plane, quit my job, which was on a really good salary, really good bonus, and I'm going to go to the bottom of the rung. So I landed in London, got a job in an advertising firm, selling classified space at the lowest possible wage possible. So after paying my rent and all those things, I was on the Northern Line. I think I had £85 a month to live on. That was my whole take. Now this is not a sob story; it's just kind of the evolution. Anyway, that didn't
Mm.
work out, as you can imagine. That's not a lot of money to live in London. So I started looking for jobs, and I wanted to get into media or something cool where I could wear jeans and a t-shirt to work. That was the primary goal, and where I could do travel. And all of a sudden, eBay had this roll up, and it was based in Dublin, so I'd have to move home. But it was 50% travel, so it meant I got to do a lot of things. And you mentioned briefly when we were talking just about, Manchester and Liverpool and all those cool places. I ended up spending a lot of time up there. So in eBay, I was the second employee globally to have a role in their enterprise account management team. So I was the second employee globally to ever visit an eBay seller. So this was a big deal for eBay because there was such a closed book. So we get access to the then CEO, Laurie Norrington, and it meant we also got the keys to the car. So not being a technical developer, I had to learn how to understand technical products, I had to understand the architecture. We then had to work within the eBay ecosystem, which is kind of like the Shopify ecosystem now, but was quite different back in 2007. And I just loved the world that I moved into because we got to deal with operations and customer service and marketing and trading and merchandising. And all of a sudden, we're exposed to some of the biggest retailers in the UK. Like my first two retailers I worked with were JD Sports and Argos. Like it doesn't get too much bigger.
Yeah.
And they were amazing teams and with great people who were happy to help and let you learn from them. And we had that same kind of team in eBay. And that was my first entry into e-commerce. So I was blown away by it because we grew that team from nothing. I think, and I stand to be corrected on the numbers, but I'm pretty sure in GMV terms, we were doing over $1 billion in revenue through this program after about
Insane.
3 years. So it grew, and it was in Madrid and Rome and Paris and Germany, where I got to spend some time with our eBay colleagues as well and learn more about the German market. So look, I at that point, and I don't want to bore you too much with the rest of the journey, but that was just a really great grounding for everything that I wanted to try and take through my e-commerce journey. And a lot of it still lives true today. The network, the people, the methods, and being able to think at a different scale because you're working with eBay. The numbers were huge, so they taught you to think big and think with scale. And then you got to work with amazing retailers as well. So I felt just really lucky coming out of that job. Um, Look, there's more after, but for me, that was such an unbelievable intro into our world.
Quite fascinating because I don't think a lot of guys get to work on such large scale in the initial phases of their career, and that kind of shapes you in a very different way altogether, in my opinion.
It,
Right?
it, it does, and there was something about it. The very first thing you learn when you go into eBay is that all people are good, right? That's a founding value that you go in and learn, and it's kind of needed for what we want to do because you think about the partner ecosystem you work in, and it's built on trust and making
Yeah.
relationships and going in with an open mind because your first instinct is not to protect yourself or to protect what you have. It's to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you everything I know. You tell me everything you know, and we can see, can we figure out how to work together?
Yeah. And that's exactly how things should be. Unfortunately, is not for what of multiple reasons.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah. So no, perfect. Um, I think this question, a lot of people that I've spoken to don't qualify to answer, but you're one of those. So
Okay. I'm
let me
nervous.
uh, let me try to put it in this way that when you with your entire retail experience, which is where the whole shopping started to transform for people, you've seen the evolution of retail to an e-commerce to an omni-channel at the moment,
Mhm.
right? But from a human psychology perspective, I always believe the fundamentals of why people buy remain the same. Right? How do you think this transition has been on people? Like in the other words, if I can say that, is e-commerce all about trying to mimic the retail experience in some way, or how do you think this entire omni-channel experience is?
I've thought a lot about that recently. It's interesting you ask, and I talked about it. There's a podcast that I produce with a couple of guys in the US and ladies, and we talked about it last week. And I think where we get it right, it's mimicking the experience. It's functional, it's convenient, and I think of Amazon in this respect. And I don't say that lightly because we all don't necessarily want to just fall into the Amazon umbrella, but you think about their experience since 1997 when they IPO'd, it hasn't changed a huge amount. Not even the colors have changed, and the colors
Yeah.
are pretty god awful to look at. So I think at its best, it's when we mimic it. Where I think we've gotten it wrong is that we sometimes try to create tools that are born out of maybe seeing a problem on a website rather than thinking, is there a real behavioral aspect here? And behaviorally, I think we've become a little bit passive in our own engagement with what we think is going to be useful. So we have phones in our hands, we have devices going on all the time, and we've stopped kind of trying to figure out what would be a thing that makes shopping interesting for me. So I remember one of the first things I thought was really interesting was an Etsy and Facebook integration maybe 10 years ago, where I could build my Christmas list using an Etsy plugin to understand what people liked on Facebook. So I could go and buy my brother a relevant Christmas gift because I know he likes the Killers, and a
Right.
new vinyl album would be cool or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was kind of one side of it. On the other, having worked in someone like eBay, I think marketplaces have created a bit of a false economy for us. So let me explain that just for a second,
Please.
because the idea that we should all have free shipping all the time and next day delivery on everything is absurd.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't need that in my life. I'm sure you don't. There are
Yeah.
certain times and certain instances where yes,
Oh,
it would be very, very useful.
yeah.
But as a standard, it's not. And I think marketplaces have really created this false economy for the sorts of technologies and experiences we should expect. So we really need to start thinking logically about what we want from those experiences. And that's even if we want to. So I don't know that we as human beings want to do that, because now we want everything just to be convenient. And that's where I think experiential technologies, experiential retail really struggles, because we don't know what we want. I just went to NRF in America, in New
Yeah.
York, sorry, 2 weeks ago for the first time ever. There was some unbelievable innovation in the building, like some of the coolest things you could ever imagine. But for them to become mainstream, it's going to be such a challenge for people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really struggle with that concept. So I think unless we start thinking less passively, we take our heads out of our phones. And if phones didn't exist today, how differently would we think about the technologies or the experiences we want to get from e-commerce? I think it would be hugely different.
Very interesting aspect of that. Yeah. If we could ever imagine a world without our phones, we can't. Uh,
But to take another point or give you another point of view, and I'd be
or,
interested to hear what you think of it because of your role in our world, is we've accepted a kind of a 3% conversion rate now for
yeah.
15 years.
Yeah.
It's ultimately meant, and there was a report done last week, I think it was by the Retail X Group. There's only 5 retailers of the top 250 retailers in the fashion vertical who reported profitability in the UK in 2023. 5.
Wow.
So if we think a 3% conversion rate, and it's even less in the UK, it's about 2.4%, I think, is
Yes.
the average across the board. If we think that that's going to elevate our businesses and for more of us to buy better technologies, we're doomed. I mean, we're not going to be able to do this for another 10 years and expect that the industry doesn't go pop at some point.
Yeah. It's about creating a very false expectations when the other guys are bleeding, and the smaller guys can't continue to do that. And I think, again, e-commerce has one of the highest failure rates as an industry as well, because everything is so driven around performance and just opex that you need to pump in money to bring in ads and just do it, and you're not able to even convert three guys there to generate revenue and even become break even. Forget about profits and stuff. Yeah.
But you shouldn't have to fight for people to say, well, if that's the case, we shouldn't have to fight for people to say, well, if I invest another, 400, 500 euros a year, which is, 35 quid a month to get better conversion, I should be tasking one of my team with it. And I probably didn't say it at the outset, but an ownership stake in a direct to consumer brand myself. We sell tents in the US market.
Nice.
So I'm not just kind of a preaching consultant. I'm practicing it as well. Our conversion rate is less than 0.5%. So
Well,
for every 100 people coming in the door, we need either a person's torso or their legs to convert for us to get one sale. And that's after 6 years of us building up this profile. Like our next version, I'll send you the video after the call. We're releasing a new brand video into the wild next week, and we've a brand strategy. But I don't think there's anything else we can do, because we've done the Einstein thing. We've repeated ourselves to the same tools and techniques over the last 5 and 6 years, and the same things have happened. To think that if we do it again this year, something different will happen is just crazy. So we have to let people know we exist in order for us to be able to convert better, and then to apply all those conversion tools that you might need to bring the journey home in a quicker fashion. That's kind of a key challenge for us.
Wow. So you're taking this conversation at a very different level now, Vinny. I need to
Sorry.
maybe get a refill of my coffee to even digest this. But um, so are you trying to say that in this new era of omni-channel and the new shopping behaviors where you coexist with the marketplaces and things like that,
Mhm.
um, brand building kind of becomes one of the biggest priorities because people know you, and then that's how the buying journey consideration cycle starts, and then is that how I look at it?
I think it has to be for us at this point in time. And I think that's the key for people. It's to understand, or to figure out, when's the moment in time that you invest in that brand piece. And that's not easy. So to give another example, if I was starting a brand today, I would either say I want to build a brand that allows me to build up a sales profile on Amazon for 2 years to
Hmm.
prove that I can do it and to prove I can get profitability. At that point, I might start saying, well, we need to polish our brand. But if I can't do it on Amazon, most competitive landscape on earth, it puts you through all the process requirement that you need to have a good service level.
Hmm.
If I can't do it there, I'm really going to struggle to be able to do something on my website with less efficiency and less polish and make customers feel better. It doesn't work like that. Not for me anyway. The other way I'd be approaching it is saying, well, do you know what? I'm one person. I have a small SKU base. Let's say I'm selling a small number of things. I want to go and build a community around this. I'm going to focus on TikTok and TikTok Shop, because
Sure.
I can do everything on my mobile. I can work there. I can manage the business. I can run it. I can do my advertising. I control all of that. That to me are the two key starting points that I'd be focusing on now. And one of the core reasons for me is that if you look at all the other things that we have to do as brands, there requires a multiple different number of skill sets. I have to
Yeah.
be a digital marketer. I have to be an advertiser. I have to be operationally sound. I've got to be all these things. And the one thing that I think we're missing, apart from talent in general, is something I learned in Manchester, which was the trading mentality. You wake up every morning, the clock goes back to zero.
Yeah.
You've got a target on the wall. You're thinking to yourself, what do I have in my pocket that I can change this today? And I always quote Rich Chappell on this. I don't know if you know Rich, who used to be in Gymshark and the Hut Group.
Yeah.
Rich says you walk the shop floor. So he brought this mentality into Gymshark, where you go in every morning, you check the site, you check links are working, you make sure the merchandising is done correctly. And he kind of describes it that if you were opening a physical store today and it was raining at 8:30 in the morning, you'd go out and put the umbrellas at the front door, hoping that someone is going to work who's forgot their umbrella and is getting wet, and they've got a meeting or whatever the journey is.
Wow.
But that you get the incremental sale by just doing
Yeah.
that one little thing. So it's about that incremental uplift that you get every day.
Wow. And these are those very customer driven initiatives that everybody needs to kind of take, going over and beyond what others don't. And I think that's what customers really value, and they would look at you and come back to you again and again because of that.
Yeah, I think so, because we know loyalty is pretty much non-existent, or it's really tough to get people to be loyal. I like the services for me where loyalty really only exists are generally in services. Like, my Amazon Prime account is linked to my TV, my Audible.
Yeah.
Um, it's rarely about the delivery service that really they sell it on, and it's gone up 50% since I subscribed the first time. So I'm not
Yeah.
price sensitive to it at all. Similarly with Netflix, I just think it's something we enjoy, we utilize loads. My kids get to use it a little bit too much, but it's very hard to get and foster that loyalty through selling a T-shirt or a sweater. Um, particularly in today's age where there's so many substitute products where you can pick up something different and
Yeah.
attention is just hard to grab for people.
So if you're looking at again the whole online e-commerce Shopify space, right? And if a merchant had to kind of prioritize things to focus on, right? What would be the top three things that you would suggest in order or in the chronological order?
I would go number one, trading. So that's what I just mentioned. It's getting up and beating the number every day. Number two, I would be looking at the automation within my business. How much of this can I leverage and automate because we can now, and it makes sense. So you get time back. And then the third part would be probably customer profiling and trying to figure out what are things that customers are doing on a daily basis
Hmm.
that I have access to that I can impact to make my business better. And they to me feel like things that you don't have to be technically proficient in. You know, you can go to YouTube and learn how to do this for the most part.
Absolutely.
You can ask
Yeah.
a question of a colleague and say, "How do I do this?"
Yeah.
So I think there's skills that we can learn, and I'd really encourage people to start upskilling people as well, and that's why those three things kind of fall into priority for me.
And upskilling part, I think, is so undervalued today. There
Absolutely,
are so many resources. Like, it's insane. But I have a 6-year old, and we spend some time every weekend on Khan Academy. I don't know if you've heard about them.
okay.
Uh, so and just from the information perspective, when I realized this, oh my God, this is all for free, and it's just so
Sure.
amazing, right? Uh, and the other thing which kind of is really fascinating is how tech is adding all this to you. Like yesterday, I saw a company release Figma to Shopify in one click,
Wow,
right?
that's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah, I know it might be a new product, will take maybe a few months or a year altogether, but even the sight of that somebody can actually do this and will make save so many hours and heartaches and money, etc., is just amazing, and people just do not uh, kind of look at that. So my question
So,
here,
could it be
yeah,
a
sorry,
benefit? Sorry for jumping in. I just wanted to ask that. I mean, as part of a personal development plan or a benefit, it's something that people are always looking for ways to give back to their teams or different ways. If you could give back 10% of time guaranteed on a monthly basis to self learning,
yeah,
it would be really useful because it means I can, work from home and go on YouTube and learn a skill or come in and test a project for you and say, well, we've had a problem with customer service and the volume of calls we get or the volume of FAQs.
yeah,
I've spent 2 months researching it and I want to put this into play. I think something like that is, it's cost negative to people.
no, absolutely. But from a point of view, like from a merchant's hat, right? You have
Mm.
you have the advantage of wearing both and switching when you want. But now I'm not letting you. Uh, so there are so many new things happening, right? When you went to NRF, it's just mind-boggling to see the kind of innovations going on
Sure.
at a level that you really get confused and are like, now what the heck, right? I don't understand. What limits you to even go and try something? Because I've seen a lot of people not even wanting to go that path, and for me as a tech provider, sometimes I get very amazed, like it seems so straightforward, it's going to help you. Why are you not even wanting to do this?
So I think it's a lack. It's probably a fear of being asked a question you don't know the answer to, right? So no matter who, no matter who you go to, and look, we're on Shopify, so I'll talk to Shopify app providers right now
Okay.
because it's the area I'm used to, I guess. So as soon as you get on a call, someone will expose a part of your business where you say, I haven't been watching that, or I didn't know that that was happening. And
Yeah,
I think sometimes the fear of being told that can be enough to make you not want to ask a question, or you don't really have a list of priorities of what's important in your business right now to know, well, I listen to you, but these are the three things I need to figure out about. Or it's the open mind thing that I mentioned to you earlier. I think we get so hung up on acquisition as a method for growing our business I think, there's a lot of talk about profitability now. I think that's going to be a challenge for people. It's not going to happen overnight. So there's no quick fix. I think you've got to do a lot of different things. And I also had this weird kind of thought process around Black Friday last year, which was around this area of how do you, as service providers, say to me as a merchant, you're not getting the best value out of your app. And I think you wrote yesterday that someone said, Kui has no value to me, or we're not sure, it's not working, right?
Yeah, yeah,
How do you know it's not? Because you've either got the wrong person on it, or
yeah,
you're doing the wrong thing, or they just
yeah,
don't know how to use it, to get lazy, or they hit a point and they haven't done the knowledge training or whatever, so they just go, oh, I don't want this. I maintained last Black Friday. This is, you can tell me if I'm crazy or not, but where you've got tiered systems of operating for various tools across Shopify, which is in general how most people work. For the Black Friday months, instead of giving people money off, upgrade all your customers onto your top tier and let them see the full suite of your tool set in place, while they have the most traffic they're going to get all year, where they're going to have people who are trying to shop and utilize tools, and say to them at the end of that period, commit to 1 hour of a call with us and we will evaluate what happened and why it happened for you, and then see, can we get you to purchase our product again. And
wow, yeah,
to me, it allows you to demonstrate value. It allows me to understand the value. And it allows us to debate as to what your contribution to it was. Because I think the one thing I think small businesses get afraid of is they hear attribution and someone trying to claim a sale, and they just get afraid of it.
yeah,
So if we can get the conversation into value, well, you spent 40 quid a month for the last 3 months,
mm,
120 quid, and we've contributed £8,000 in additional revenue, or £20,000. That's your ROAS right there. And that's the discussion. Like, convince me why you don't need to have this on your site all the time. So that's why I think it's the fear. I think it's the fear of being told there's something you're missing in your own business.
all right. I'm going to admit this to whoever watching. I'm going to shamelessly copy the strategy in the upcoming Black Friday, Vinny, and I'm telling you this. No,
Look, and let me know how it goes, because
yeah,
I do not see a world where you will not either retain more customers or
of course.
earn customers by doing something like that.
Yeah. But, it's always the hunch of trying to get that insights, which is product working insights, but also the insights of the mind of the merchants. Is what are they thinking? Why is it not working? Which is very tough, because I know their daily job is so operationally busy, and trying to take out time for things like that is never important enough for them. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's down to who's using it as well, I think, because if you've got someone who's only half committed to a project, or they've been told by their boss you've got to do this,
yeah, yeah,
they may not want it to take up a lot of the time, because it might be the boss saying, I've just been to a conference, I've seen this cool thing, I want you to try it, and you know yourself, you've got 20 other things to do. So
absolutely.
that's the priority list. I think we've just got to be far more task focused, and maybe it's to do with our industry. It's quite loose. We kind of, we plan per quarter, per half, maybe per year for some people. And I had a really interesting conversation with a guy called Nick Kaplan. You should definitely talk to Nick. He's phenomenal.
Love to.
Chief Growth Officer at Pattern. And he said he would not operate his business on a full accounting cycle right now. He'd be operating week to week. He'd be looking at money in, money out, and he would be purchasing services depending on the need at that moment in time. And I thought it was really interesting, because you think about it, you know yourself, after 2 or 3 years of running a business, you know the patterns that emerge, the
Hmm.
bad weeks, the good weeks.
Yeah,
Should we be in a
absolutely.
position where we can switch up our cost base and manage it a little bit more fluidly, and give ourselves flexibility to earn profitability a different way?
It's an operational nightmare for providers like us, but from a merchant perspective, what they ask is, I think, very reasonable.
Oh, look, I'm just giving you the fuel. I don't mind what you do with it. But no, look, I appreciate it. And you
Yeah,
see that at
indeed.
NRF, so many committed people, so many great technologies that
Yeah,
were in play. And you'll see that IRX and all the great shows that are going
of
on
course.
in and around the UK in the coming months. But that to me, I think that must be mentally a very difficult thing to, one, build yourself up for, and then two, to manage it when you walk away from it, because you've got all these so-called great
Yeah,
leads, and then it's almost like, being let down on a date or something, because there's no response. You're being ghosted. At least that's how my teenage years were. But it's a very tough thing, I'd imagine, to be on the other side of that, to be the vendor and to go through that
It,
process.
it is, and the thing is that, like in life, going a little philosophical here, but closure is so important. uh,
Yeah.
if you try to work with somebody, you deliver value, good. The value doesn't come in, fine, okay, he doesn't see the value, it's okay, you try, they tried, it doesn't work. But that ghosting somewhere in the middle, is, I so hope, if one thing I could change in this whole process is ghosting. Just tell me no. It'll save so much of my time and heartache. They have no idea that, how valuable that is. But
No,
yeah,
and look, I'm sad to say I've probably been guilty of it a little bit over the last couple of years, where there's things I haven't been able to get to.
yeah,
And I say that openly and honestly, and it's not nice. I mean, there's a human at the end of it. But I say all that with the intention of kind of getting around to the discussion of, um, providing you with enough information to make
yeah,
a decision on whether or not your tech is good or not. For me, it shouldn't be cat and mouse. It should be very much a black and white discussion where we know where we stand.
yeah. On this take, you mentioned the whole acquisition side of things, right?
Mhm.
I think any brand once come up with the school product and packaging and supply chain, once they fixed, they'll like to go to this amazing performance marketing agency, who'll go and charge them, hundred thousands of dollars to go and run ads, etc., etc. I don't know how many people think about the whole CRO piece, and when do they start thinking about the CRO piece,
That many people.
and why is that, Vinny?
Because it's harder. It's perceived to be harder, I think. And the way, so I worked at a CRO agency on positioning about 3 years ago, and what we talked about was the 3% rule. So you go into a pitch and you say to someone, okay, what's your conversion rate? 3%, great, okay. Well, what do you do with the 97% of people who you let just walk off your site every day? Do you not
Yeah,
want to fight and get 5% or 6%? Or, I'm not telling
absolutely,
you you're going to get to 20% conversion, but
totally.
this is about a fight for increments. I think because it's harder work, to be honest. I think there's maybe a fear that what you're doing is a little bit hooky, and I think this is probably an area where you get into arguments like, do you like pop-ups, yes or no?
Yeah,
And it becomes very opinion focused. Now, I
absolutely.
downloaded Timu probably in September. I wanted to try it out and see
Sure.
what's going on. It is the most aggressive CRO led app site I have ever seen in my life.
Insane. Insane.
I think Sam Panzer, I don't know if you know Sam from Talon One. Sam
Hmm.
did a great rundown on it last week, I think, to show what they do from a we will fight for every penny that you have perspective. And
Wow.
I'm always mind blown by it. I get three or four updates. I haven't even turned off notifications. That's how interested I am in their strategy. They are relentless. And I think it's just harder work for people to get into CRO, and maybe it's seen as a little bit more scientific. I think we have to pay attention to it though, that and merchandising in general, because if you look at the ad platforms, they're working towards becoming fully automated, right? So you've got PMax and Advantage Plus. In 18 months, are you really going to need an agency if you're kind of a business doing up to 10, 15 million a year? It's very
I,
debatable.
yeah.
So you're going to be focusing your skills on CRO type activity, and I kind of I say merchandising separately, but they're in the same boat, right? They're
Yeah.
both about maximizing every return to the site. So I think that merchandising role is the most important role we should be training for in the next 2 years. And I'm on an engagement with as big a client as I've ever had in the US, and it's specifically on merchandising training. And we've been working on it now for 7 months, and we'll continue to do it because it evolves so much. The technologies change so much, and I think if you're really into CRO, you will try new technologies because you're curious, right? You want to change your mentality. Say, well, maybe what I need this month is not what I need next month,
Yeah.
or I need to have these 10 things available to me all the time, even though I'm going to use two or three at any one time. So that balancing act and that curiosity is something I'd encourage people to start thinking about.
So do you think there's a like tiny faint light at the end of the tunnel for people like us?
Yes, it's like everything. I think it's just timing. That's the only thing, and probably the part that's the biggest challenge I think on your side is getting the time to demonstrate value on a one-to-one level with everyone. Because I'm sure if you could do that, you would have huge retention, and it's easy to keep people on board. But because of the way we have team setups and all those things, we kind of lose elements of the messaging, the way messaging is distilled throughout our team. So I think that becomes, like I said, I think it's a timing thing. I've earmarked merchandising as being one of the most important skills we need in 2025. We work towards it now, and we need to learn more about the tools that are available for it as well.
Super. How do you see AI impacting all of the conversation that we've had? Are you a big believer this is going to be a disruption, or you're still kind of skeptical?
Uh, Disruption is probably not the word I use anymore, because I think one of the things I'm seeing is that it's embedded in everything. Okay, we have to assume that whatever technology we're adopting right now, there will be aspects of AI that are going to be in there. I think we've got to figure out, where do we want it to be useful for us? So,
Super.
are you
Mhm.
someone who's creating, thousands of listings every month for a website, excuse me, and you're trying to write descriptions? AI can be useful from that perspective, and variations of AI. Um, if you're doing back end reporting and you want to start, you know, saving yourself time every month, AI tools can be useful. Similarly, from a conversion point of view, there, as you well know, there's a lot of tools and techniques that we can use. We just have to trust it a little bit. So I think the more we're curious about it, um, the easier it becomes to trust it. But the other thing it does by being curious, at least from my perspective, is it encourages us to create a feedback loop, to say this is
Absolutely.
working, this is not. How do we change it?
Yeah.
So AI for me is pretty much, it's there in everything that we now have. We have to develop the curiosity to determine what we want it to do for us. And I think if we do that, it doesn't feel like it's such a disruption. Like I've used Alexa now for 5 years, 6 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's never going to hold my shopping list, but it does timers for cooking. It allows me
Yeah.
to ask stupid questions about football if I want to find out a result and I'm not near my phone.
Yeah.
It lets my kids play music. So
Sure.
it's now an embedded part of our lives, and we just accept that it's there, and it's in our cars for using hands free. Like there's a lot of different applications
True.
for it. So excuse me, the disruption piece. I'm probably I'm open to seeing where it can really disrupt and make life quite interesting.
All right. Oh, perfect. Yeah, Winnie, all this is such a fresh breath of perspective that I didn't even think that I'll gather from our conversation. But it's been amazing. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
all this.
We should do it
Um,
again and see how wrong I've been in 6 months' time.
we should. We absolutely do that. I'm going to block in a date for it from
Okay.
now, for sure. But before I let you go, this has to be the most important and the most difficult question.
Okay.
Brace yourself. It's coming. Uh, you have to share something about yourself with me and the community that you've never kind of told anyone.
Oh, I kind of I got slagged about this recently. I went to an MTV party once, and this is kind of like a name drop brag, but I'll give you another one. But I
Okay.
kissed Carmen Electra. True story, the Hollywood actress.
Yeah.
And I was at an MTV awards party in
Yeah.
Dublin in 2013 or something. So when I told that story, nobody believed me. So at least once a week now, I get a text from this group of friends, and they say, "Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
by the way, I kissed Carmen Electra." So that's one. Another is, about a year ago, I decided I wanted to connect with people that were important to me in the industry and figure out a way to kind of have a drink and socialize. So we created a virtual happy hour. So
Nice.
that's been happening for about a year now. The first Friday of every month, connecting people all around different parts of the world. We have one coming up on Friday. I'll DM you the link,
Yes.
but it's not something I publicize. When I meet people I think are interesting and fun, and maybe you'd like to pop along and have a cup of tea or a beer and say hello. It's a nice venue, and it's a good way to get to know people, and just to be yourself, because there's no work talk allowed. Well, not no pitching, no sales, no. I work for this company. It's all a bit of fun. Um, there are two things. I'm 6'2". That's probably the final thing. A lot of people think I'm quite short and sat down, but I'm 6'2". I play a lot of sports,
Nice.
and I'm much taller in real life.
Wow. The Carmen Electra one is the best, I have to say. But yeah, but I'd love to get a part of that group as well. But again, Winnie, this is years and years of your journey, struggles, and learnings that you kind of imparted and shared with all of us. And these are gold nuggets. These are not something that even the Khan Academies of the world can give you, because this comes from real experience. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that with us. And
Patrick, I
as
appreciate it, and I appreciate you asking me on and taking the time out of your diary as well. I know you're incredibly busy too, so and I like the questioning. It was really nice to have a very different conversation than I would normally have.
Yes, like I said, right, seeing your profile, I knew it is going to take a very interesting turn, and I'm so glad it did. I learned a lot, and I'm looking to impart at least one of them right away, and hope some of the others from the community as well. So thank you again, Vinny, and the 6 months time starts now, right?
I look
So
forward to it. Let's do it.
perfect. All right.